Residents of Ekurhuleni have until the 29th of April to comment on the city's draft integrated development plan and budget. Community members have the opportunity to raise issues related to the tariff increases, policy proposals and debt relief. For more on this, I'm now joined by ANC Chief Whip in Ekurhuleni, Jongizizwe Dlabathi. Good evening and thank you very much for your time and joining us tonight here on In Focus. First and foremost, what is your analysis and perspective on the Democratic Alliance or supposed coalition-led government, IDP and budget proposals?
Good evening, Pratabo and the viewers, and also thank you for the opportunity that you have granted to us. Well, in our view, the firstly is that the principle of IDP says to us that it is a planning instrument which must be subjected to community consultation, for it to qualify that the IDP and the budget will then respond to the needs of the communities. Now, the first thing that we've done as the ANC caucus was to extensively engage with the various community members across the city. And from those consultations, about 389 needs were brought into our attention, ranging from electricity, roads and stormwater, water and sanitation, human settlement, the maintenance of the public infrastructure, amongst others. Now, our analysis of what the DA-led coalition budget is therefore going to fund, out of the 389, for instance, we've noted that only about 82 of the community needs are going to be funded by this budget. And the question is that, is this a budget that is pro-poor, a budget that is informed by the will and the inputs of the people? So firstly, we can say without a doubt that this budget is not crafted mindful of the critical inputs of the people. Secondly, we have analyzed the tariffs that are proposed by the DA-led coalition. For instance, they are proposing an increase on the cemetery and burial tariffs. As the ANC caucus, we are saying there must be no increase on the cemetery and burial tariffs, purely because community members over time have complained about the expensive or exorbitant price of paying for graves. Secondly, they are proposing a huge 11% on the sanitation. The ANC is opposed to that proposal. We are rather proposing a consumer price index-based increase of a 4.8%. The rationale is that the economy is ailing, people have lost jobs, the disposable income is constrained. It makes no logical sense to impose a tariff of 11% on such a basic and essential need, mindful of the constrained disposable income. Therefore, they are proposing a 7% on the refuse removal, which is way above the CPI, and we are proposing that that tariff must also be kept at the CPI base level. So, secondly, Bratabo, the proposal on the tariffs by the DA-led coalition fails to appreciate the sensitivity of the economy, that people have lost jobs, and that obviously the disposable income is constrained. So the last part, the last part that I want to just share is around some of the policy proposals. For instance,
before we get to the policy proposals, then let's rather talk about this issue of the rates, for example, that you are saying should be done away with. I mean, you know that the main source of finance, in as far as the operating budget of the city is concerned, are these rates and these taxes that are being paid. And if you're saying they should not be increased, however, maybe aligned to the CPI. Where do you propose that the city would get this important revenue?
No. We are not saying do away with increase on the tariffs. We are saying that be sensitive to the economic conditions, be sensitive to the impact of the COVID-19 on the disposable income and job losses. And the fact of the matter is that if you impose exorbitant tariffs, you are making it difficult for community members to be able to service their accounts. So we must not be understood to saying completely do away with tariff increase. We are saying impose what is supposed to be reasonable tariffs to community members. A simple example, Bratabo, if, for instance, Jongizizwe gets a 5% salary increase, right? How do you think a Jongizizwe will be able to afford a 11% increase and a subsequent 7% increase that is being imposed by the municipality? So that is the rationale that we are bringing to say, be sensitive to where we are, disposable incomes are constrained, and if you are to consider an increase, we accept it, but it must be within the consumer price index. Now, the solution, Pratabo, is that the municipalities must actually desist from wanting to rely solely on their service charges. Municipalities must begin to explore other alternative ways of revenue collections, which includes, amongst others, private public partnership projects that are yet at revenue generation, because it is an old-fashioned approach to think that you can get all your money from the service charges.
Yeah.
As I'm speaking to you, we are going to cancel on Thursday, and the third quarter report points to us that, in fact, the debtors account has increased from 23 billion from the second quarter to 24 billion. So that on its own, it's a sign that you can no longer solely rely on a mere increase of service charges, because 85% of the 24 billion is a debtor that is owned by ordinary residents.
But others would argue, for example, in 2018, when you were in government, the city saw tariff increases, for example, in electricity between 5.32% and 8.5%, subject to usage. That was not within CPI. You were also proposing 12.96% increase in water. This also not in line with CPI. Why would you expect another party coming into power to do things that you did not do when you were in office?
Well, let me assist you on that one. It's not quite complicated. For instance, the tariff charges on electricity are regulated by NERSA. And you should know that ESCOM do apply to NERSA, and NERSA approve those charges. Now, those charges, when they're approved by NERSA, there is a limited opportunity for any municipality, for that matter, to charge below, because that will constitute to a deficit in the revenue collection. So they are regulated, Pratabo. You cannot charge them below or even at the CPI. So as the rent water, those charges, you pass them to the consumer as they are. Once you start to add a percentage on what NERSA and what rent water has actually charged to you, then that's where the problem is. You can look at what the Democratic Alliance is actually charging on both electricity and water. It's the same tariffs that NERSA and both rent water have actually approved for them. So it's nothing unusual. But there are those tariffs that you have a direct control. As I said, a simple tariff like a symmetry, you can increase it at CPI, you can increase sanitation at CPI, and you can increase weight collection at CPI. So you must distinguish between those that you have a direct control and those that you don't have a direct control, but you can simply pass.
All right, quickly before we run out of time, the DA has taken a position to remove electric boxes. In fact, they're saying they've appointed an agent to restrict and to discontinue water to any premises that is not paying, to be able to, I suppose, improve on collection. What's your position on that?
Well, our position is clear. We are rejecting, without a doubt, any policy proposition that seeks to close water or restrict water. You should know, Brati, and the rest of the viewers, that access to water is a human right. I was listening to your show earlier when you covered the situation in KwaZulu-Natal, where water has been restricted. And the reaction there is quite really heartening and concerning. And the impact is huge. So you can only block, in our view, electricity, but you must never block or restrict water. If they continue with that proposal, we are definitely going to approach the Human Rights Commission to look at the issue, because we strongly believe that you are interfering with the human rights. We are also opposing the removal of the electricity boxes. You can block the meter itself, because once you remove the box, then you must restore it. It would mean that you must then charge the same household where you have removed the box. We are also rejecting any attempt to want to make a person to be held accountable for an account of a deceased. In fact, the ANC caucus is proposing the immediate scrapping of using 2 accounts. If Jongizizwe passes away, close off that account so that you don't burden the new person to deal with that account. The other proposal we are making is that we must consider reducing the down payment that is required as part of the credit control, because we must be sensitive, Prati, that a person who is old, unemployed, if you want that person to pay a 70,000 upfront, where is that person going to get that money to pay? And the last proposal that we are making on the policy is the complete abolishment of the use of attorneys to collect money. Households don't have a relationship with attorneys or any other agent that is appointed by the municipality. We are saying, as the caucus of the ANC, the municipality must build internal capacity that will ensure that on a constant basis it interacts with community members, encourage them and remind them to pay for the services. And lastly, Prati, we are still calling for the 75% debt write-off for all the accounts that are above 90%. In fact, in the last council meeting, we want to commend the decision that was taken by council to agree to our recommendation that we must consider a debt write-off. So it is no longer a political statement, the issue of a debt write-off. It is a matter that the council itself has agreed that it must be considered. And we are looking forward to
what degree has council agreed on the percentage? You're calling on 75% write-off?
Well, the council has agreed on a principle, and the principle is that consider a debt write-off on all the accounts that are 90 days and above, where you have found it impractical and uneconomical for you to collect. And we are open to a discussion on the degree to which they can write off. But as a starting point, we are saying 75%. In fact, the community of Kwatema is raising 100%. The community of Tendisa is also raising 100%. However, we are saying there is a need for the community and the government to meet each other halfway. So write off 70%, subject the other 25% into a debt arrangement so that community members, they themselves, are able to make a contribution and play their citizenry role in supporting our local government.
NC Chief Whip in Ekurhuleni, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. Jongizizwe Dlabathi there, outlining their position on the IDP budget that is open for proposal up until the end of this week if you are in the city of Ekurhuleni.